Welcome to the NOSA Unleashed podcast, where we want to expose and remove the stigma surrounding mental health by discussing real-life challenges and obstacles that keep us paralyzed and fearful to move forward. Let us inspire you to believe there is more to life than what you are currently experiencing. Now is the time to end the silence and pursue the path to purpose and fulfillment. We will do this together because no one stands alone. Welcome back to the NOSA Unleashed podcast. I'm Laura Burgoyne, joined here with my sister Connie Blackwood. And this month, we actually want to talk about recalibrating in your life and what that means, and how doing this as a regular practice is not only needed, but also super effective as, really focusing in on what your priorities are and deciding what, is really important and pinnacle for moving forward. And today specifically, we want to just talk about reevaluating priorities. So Connie, welcome to the conversation.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Priorities, I think, is huge, right? Because we are pulled in so many different directions. And I mean, I know that for me personally, we might dedicate our time to certain things in certain stages of life. And sometimes when our life changes, we sometimes find it difficult to, you know, reevaluate and restructure some of those other things in our life. And I've found personally for myself times when I've been so overwhelmed and unable to, really cope with the day to day because I have just too much on my plate. And I've had to like sit down and take some time to reflect and shift some of my mindsets and reevaluate what is really important in this season of my life. And for me personally, this season of my life is changing because my kids are growing up. I was actually reflecting this on in the car with my husband yesterday. It's like my third son is actually turning 18 in January. I'm like literally flabbergasted, how quickly that has happened. But, my children are growing up. They're slowly leaving the nest. They're going to have their own lives. And that means some things are going to shift for me. And, it's time for me to reevaluate some priorities. How does this topic relate to you, Connie?
Well, I've been thinking about comfort zones, right? And
Mm.
how when we're so used to something and we're so good at it that we sometimes don't even recognize that it's something that isn't a priority anymore, right? And it
Right.
shouldn't still be a priority anymore, but because we're so used to it and we're so comfortable in it that we don't want to let it go
Right.
because that means that you're letting it something go that was super important to you. And sometimes I think it's the comfort, and sometimes I think it's nostalgia, right? Like it was so important when you started it, right? And now you're so good at it and you don't want to let it go. And it's this big piece of your life. And letting it go doesn't mean that it wasn't still a big piece of your life. Like I think we just get that in our head. And then we don't want to reprioritize our life because we're like, I don't want to let this go because this is important to me. Well, it was, but is it still? Right? Like,
Mhm.
I think about my own life, right? I recently had a huge change in my life, and I was reluctant to let go of some old things that I had to let go of. And it took other people telling me I had to choose before I made a choice. And that was really hard. I think if I'd come to that choice on my own, it would have been a lot easier transition for me than make
Mhm.
like having other people come to me and say, you have to make this choice. You have to choose what you're going to prioritize, you know? And I'm like,
Right.
"Ugh," right? It actually hurt to hear that from that person. But at the same time, it needed to be done. And I look back and I'm like, "Ugh, I should have made that decision for myself instead of,
Mhm.
you know, putting someone else in the position where they had to kind of do it for me and force me into a decision when it would have been healthier the other way." And I think we do that all the time. Like we just get into these modes where we're so used to our routine, we don't want to change things, and yet it's not efficient use of our energy or our time. And there's times when God's calling us to let go of things and we're just like tight-fisted holding on for dear life. And he's like, "Why?" Like, why?
Mhm.
You don't need this anymore. This isn't where I have you heading. Like, this isn't helping you. This is going to cause you so much burnout. If I had stayed in that position, I would have been burnt out by now, right? Like I had to make a choice. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think it's important to reflect and to be okay with shifting priorities and okay to let things go. It's hard, but we have different seasons of life. If we keep trying to hold on to spring, we're never going to experience like the beauty of summer or the serenity of fall or the peaceful snowflakes falling down in the winter, right? Like there's seasons for everything and there's a purpose for everything. And sometimes
Yeah.
we need to slow down.
And reevaluate.
Hmm.
Yeah. I feel as you were speaking, a few memories from my own journey came back to mind. One very important, prevalent one was, I had four children and I was homeschooling. And in my 30s, I had a burnout and then my health started to decline. And one of the hardest decisions I had to make was to send my kids to school because my health was in such a terrible place that I couldn't homeschool anymore. I couldn't hardly even take care of myself, let alone the boys and the house and all those things. And I remember, you know, and I was also, you know, told by a friend of mine, you have to make a choice. You can't continue doing what you're doing. You have to look at everything that you are investing time and energy into right now and decide what is most important, what is your priority in this season. And my priority in that season was to get healthy, was to fix what was wrong in my body. And so I had to make the hard decision to send my kids to school. And it was not easy. And, in my heart and my mind, I was thinking it's gonna be so hard for them. It was so easy for them in general. I mean, for one of my boys, it was a little bit of a struggle, but in general, it was an easy transition for them. They seemed unfazed by it. And it gave me the opportunity to refocus on what was truly important for me in that season, which was taking care of myself. And thankfully enough, that season, didn't take many years. I was able to, turn my health around in just, over a year. And I'm glad to say that I'm healthy now. But, if I hadn't taken the time to reevaluate that, I could still be suffering today. Right. And so sometimes, like Connie, you said, sometimes we're forced into these decisions, but honestly, they're the best decisions for us. Right. And I'm glad I made that decision at that time because it's changed my life. And I needed to do that. And I needed to be prepared to step into that, knowing that, what I was choosing was good and that my kids would be fine. And that season, was coming to a close. And just because a season comes to a close doesn't mean that, all of the things that you poured into that are wasted. It's still there. That investment is still there. It still made an impact. Another example that comes to mind is, I was a facilitator of a grief support group for children who went through significant loss through death, divorce, or separation in their parents' marriage. And I did that for 10 years. I even continued, and I was talking to one of the moms the other day, and because I'm still connected to some of the kids who are now adults, by the way. um, but she said, I remember, you went had your baby at the hospital, and that very next week you were in class teaching class. She's like, you were dedicated. And I remember that. Like I prioritized that in that season. And after I had all four boys, I realized my priority in that season had to be my own family. And so after 10 years of volunteering in this program and making incredible impact in these kids' lives, and it also impacting my life, I had to make the difficult decision to say that that season was over for me and, just, really take care of my family, take care of my boys that were so young at the time and needed to have a full-time mom fully focused on their needs and taking care of them, right? And so when you go through different seasons, you have to take a step back. You have to reevaluate. You have to consider what your priorities are in each season and be willing to step into that.
And I was, as you were speaking, I was thinking about, you know, even how we prioritize different things for different reasons in different seasons. And I was thinking about even what like the season I'm going into and why I've prioritized the things I have and in what order. And it makes it easy when you know what your priorities are. When somebody goes, "Oh, I think this would be a good idea for you," you know whether or not that's a priority for you because you figured out your values, you figured out what priorities are important to you, and you can go, "Nope, no, that's not." you know? And some people just really want you to be involved in their thing because they know you'd be a really good at it or you'd like be successful or they would like benefit from you helping. But because you've already gone through this process, you say no, right? You don't add that to your plate. And it makes it so much easier to say no to things when you actually have your priorities in line and you actually know what season you're in and you know what your values are. And so for me, that's been extremely helpful is just
Mhm.
having that ability to go, no, I can't do that right now. I appreciate you
Mhm.
inviting me in, but no.
Mhm. And when you say that, something comes to mind because I was also meeting with another friend of mine last week, and she said, Laura, one thing that you said to me once, which was so powerful, which I've adopted, was because she kept, wanting or saying yes to everything because of FOMO, fear of missing out. And I said, oh no, you have to think of it a different way. You don't need FOMO, you don't have FOMO, you have JOMO, which is the joy of missing out, right? Because and when I adopted this in my life, and I realized, like, if it's, like you said, if it's not aligned with my values, if it's not aligned with my priorities right now, if it's not aligned with where I want to go or who I want to become, then it's easy to say no to those things. And so, having the ability to say no to things and have joy in it and know that I'm not missing out, because if I was partaking in those things, I'd probably be exhausted. I'd probably be getting resentful. I'd probably be like kicking myself, saying, "Why did you do this again to yourself? You're overextended. You don't have the capacity." Like, how many times do we do that to ourselves, right? We constantly commit to things that aren't what we should be doing, and we get burnt out. We get exhausted. We can't even focus on the things that are important in our life right now, what
Mhm.
things should be our priority.
Yeah, that's true. And, I think sometimes we just need to take that moment, that breath, especially when we're starting to feel overwhelmed and recognize, okay, now's the time I need to reevaluate. I think that's sometimes the indicator because, we think sometimes, oh, we'll just do this yearly. I think sometimes we need to do it monthly because our lives change quickly sometimes and we need to be able to like go, I'm overwhelmed, something needs to change. Because if you keep going down that road when you're overwhelmed, you will face burnout, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to let things go that aren't going to be moving you towards where you're headed. You do.
Hmm.
And that's the warning sign. when you're feeling overwhelmed and you're just like, ah, I cannot handle my daily day-to-day stuff anymore. That's the time when you go, okay, let's sit down. What are my values? Where are my priorities? Where am I at? Where am I headed? So that
Hmm.
you actually know. And once you take the time to do that, you'll find that it actually makes itself pretty obvious pretty quick what you need to let go of and what you don't.
Hmm. Absolutely. Something that my son said to me today, because he works for a landscape company, and where we live, we're coming into our fall winter season, and so they're done their last job. And he said to me, Mom, it's so weird to not have to go to work. And he says, I feel guilty for not going to work. Like, I need to be working right now. And he said, what do you think I should do? And I said, I think you should rest. Like, the landscaping season is so intense. Like, they sometimes work 10 to 16-hour days, 5 to 6 days a week. It is so strenuous. It's hard labor. And I'm like, no, you don't have to feel guilty. Your season's over. Now is your time to rest. This is a time for you to restore yourself, get some margin, get refreshed for next year, consider, maybe some even recreational things you want to do. But, internally, he's like struggling. He's like, no, I feel guilty. I should be working. And I was like, son, just take a month off, right? It's okay. You don't have to constantly be working. There's seasons, right? And
Mhm.
the nature of your work season is so intense that, when you have your winter season, embrace it. Take more time for yourself, take more time to rest. And I honestly think in this season, that should be his priority. But he's really struggling with that, right? Because he's a doer, he needs to be doing stuff, and it's hard for him. And I relate with that. Like, I understand that, but the more I learn to prioritize self-care and rest and boundaries and priorities, I realize I can't live without it.
Mhm. Rest is the key piece, and sometimes it has to become our priority because we have gotten so overworked, so tired, or so overwhelmed by things that we need that rest to recalibrate, to reset ourselves.
So on the subject of rest, Connie, I think this is a good place for us to pause. And next time when we come back, we want to talk about how do you simplify your life?
Mm.
Like, what are some of the practical steps, how, when you are making these priorities and recognizing that you are in a season where you need to start shifting some things. So how do you simplify? And so join us next time as we discuss that more. And before I let you go today, I want to let you know about an important event happening um, in the first week of December. We're so excited this year that we will be doing our annual silent auction live in person. So if you are local to Calgary, Alberta, and you want us to come support what we're doing, we would love for you to come join us at the Banquet Mahogany, December 2nd from 7 to 9 p.m. Tickets cost $25, which includes your dinner, a drink coupon, an entry into our door prize, as well as cake and other fun opportunities, and of course, the silent auction. So it'll be a fun night out, and we'd love to see you there. You can register for that on our website at nosafoundation.com. So we will see you next time on the No Unleashed podcast. Bye.
Bye.